the College Board puts together. But in the last 15 or 20 years or so, in my view, the College Board has become completely radicalized, as you can imagine. Academia, the radical left, the American Marxists, it's like water with cracks. They find their way, whether it's the Madison home or whether it's Monroe's home or Jefferson's home. They want to control what you think, but even more, they want to control what your kids think. We've been talking about this a long time. I wrote about it in American Marxism. But in Florida, you have a governor in Ron DeSantis who says, no, I'm not going to permit it. We put billions of dollars into our public school system. We are not going to subsidize the teaching of the destruction of honest American history and our curriculum. We're not going to give in to this. We're going to fight it. And honestly, he's really one of the few governors who will do it. And this is a very important issue because so far he's the only governor who has stood up against the College Board to fight this particular course. And you can see why. Just as with Disney, the anti-gay law, which had nothing to do with gayness whatsoever, was the anti-stop sexualizing our little kids law, here we have not an opposition to teaching African-American history, but teaching Marxism. Because as the left likes to talk about intersectionality, and as I explain in American Marxism, they're intersecting the radical Marxist agenda with race, anti-capitalism, climate, and so forth. There's at least one governor, maybe only one governor, who fully comprehends this. They don't seem to get it in the Senate. I think many of the House members do, but not in the Senate. And most of the governors don't either. What am I talking about? The College Board put together a pilot AP African American Studies course, and that's what kicked off the controversy, as pointed out by Stanley Kurtz in National Review. Well, what exactly is in this thing that's so controversial? What seems to be the problem? Now, I don't have time to read the whole thing, but they kept it secret until a Florida newspaper, the Florida Standard newspaper, got a copy of it and made it public, the curriculum. Now, why would they keep it secret? And also, they kept secret the pilot course teacher's guide for the longest time until Stanley Kurtz got a copy of that. Why would you keep it secret? It's obvious, isn't it? Because the public might be appalled. And so when you see the spokesperson for the President of the United States trashing the Republican governor of Florida for opposing African-American history studies, she's a liar. She's a propagandist, just like her boss, Joe Biden, and the rest of them in this administration, and quite frankly, the vast majority of so-called leaders in the Democrat Party. They push a lot of the propaganda to the back of the curriculum, but it's right there in your face when it comes to the teaching material. As Kurtz points out, the fourth quarter of the course features a topic on the movement of black lives. The movement for black lives was started by the Marxist organizers who founded Black Lives Matter. So that's in there. It's organized around an extensive policy platform, the Vision for Black Lives. Now, that platform is radical, to say the least. It's Marxist. As you might expect, it includes planks such as defunding the police. In fact, it goes further by calling for the abolition of all money bail and even all pretrial detention. To this end, the Vision for Black Lives endorses federal legislation by squad member Representative Ayanna Pressley. And it's worse than that. You have Marxist activists such as Robin D.G. Kelly, who is represented in this course. The teacher's guide represents an agenda in a way that's entirely free of criticism and alternative points of view. All the recommended topic readings support Black Lives Matter. Virtually all the course's authors in the final quarter of the course are part of this tight, far-left activist group. The topic immediately prior to the topic on the movement for Black Lives covers the reparations movement, which is discussed extensively. You have the authors suggest for study in the reparations topic the Ta-Nehisi Coates article, The Case for Reparations. So you can see the problem here. The course would focus on revolutionary violence advocated in the work of Frantz Fanon, especially on the reception of Fanon's writings by American radicals such as Malcolm X and the Black Panther Party. The guide stresses his 1970s interest in anti-colonial violence. It then connects his work to the belief by black radicals in the 60s and 70s that African-American studies in the United States that African-Americans in the United States live in a kind of internal colony, thereby justifying violence here in America. That's what this is. The Teacher's Guide also confirms, he says, what he claims, that the course will assign Robin D.G. Kelly's essay, Black Study, Black Struggle, a Marx-inspired argument on the revolutionary purposes to which black studies courses ought to be put. Do you think that's what should be taught? That's just the tip of the iceberg. Do you think that's what should be taught in advanced placement college board class? For every single state, every single school district? Why is there only one Republican governor who objected to this? One, DeSantis. Where's Chris Sununu in New Hampshire's bouncing around on cable, pointing to himself as a potential presidential candidate? Where are the Republican governors in Tennessee, and I'm not picking on them, and in South Dakota, and in Texas and elsewhere? Shouldn't the Republican governors be joining together to fight this stuff? Where are the Republican legislatures? Don't they take this seriously? They fund these courses. They fund these classrooms. They fund these school districts. We have 4,500 schools in this country also that are using the 1619 Project as a historical tool, teaching this. It's written by Nicole Hannah-Jones. She's one of them. But she is the main editor who's been pushing this. She got the Pulitzer Prize. She's not a historian. She is a radical. And in my view, a bigot. Just my view. And another professor, who's actually quite brilliant, Lynn Uzel, in Real Clear Politics, tells us a little bit about Hannah-Jones. She said she promotes what she views, and I agree, is a racist version of U.S. history. And this is being taught to a lot of your children. The lead article for the 1619 Project is by Nicole Hannah-Jones, who's been writing anti-white screeds at least since she was a college sophomore. In a letter to her college newspaper, she alleged, quote, "The white race is the biggest murderer, rapist, pillager, and thief of the modern world," unquote. Not only were the white people in America's past, quote, "barbaric devils," unquote, but, quote, "the descendants of these savage people," unquote, "continue to harm the black community to this day. Non-whites, by contrast, are uniformly portrayed as virtuous and victimized. What we find in her Pulitzer Prize-winning contribution to the 1619 Project is more modern in tone and more sophisticated in composition. But otherwise, it's the same racialized dualism she espoused in college. And she's not alone. In the Hannah-Jones article, an important part of the lesson plan adapted for schools, the word white is used to describe people or communities 77 times. In 35 cases, white people are described as holding some kind of power or privilege, almost always unearned or illegitimate. In 32 cases, the word is associated with oppression, injustice, cruelty, white enslavers, widespread white violence, systemic white suppression of black life, etc. In this telling of history, white Americans during the darkest days of Jim Crow held the same racist ideology as Thomas Jefferson and his fellow white colonists, quote unquote. And with 32 instances of specifically white barbarity, it is impossible to ignore the gratuitous overuse of this racial category when describing everything that is diabolical in this country's history. Nowhere do we read about a white American acting for the good, except in a single instance in which white Republicans joined forces with a black community after the Civil War, and this goes on. The problem with this is this entire Marxist agenda. You hear the word equity. It's replaced the word equality. Equality is a very important word. Equality means equality under the law, or you shouldn't be discriminated when it comes to access and housing and that sort of thing. Equity is a completely different ideology, and it's being pushed everywhere. Equity means equal outcomes. And if you don't have equal outcomes, there's discrimination, racial discrimination. So it's nothing that can ever be achieved. Because people fail and people succeed for 1,000 different reasons having nothing to do with race. How motivated they are, how hard they work, if they get some good luck, where they might live, how they might live, the kind of parental situation a child has, and on and on and on, having nothing to do with race. But if you're one of these folks, it always has something to do with race. And the word equity is perfect. because it's unachievable. Equity. Now, the problem is we have Joe Biden,